Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Bruce Garrity. Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
Hey Craig, how are you?
Great. I was looking forward to interviewing you today. It's been a little while since I've been on ArtShow, and because I've been working on other things, but back with a roar. And I wanted to start out with this painting in particular. So obviously, who doesn't see the Cezanne references within the work? But
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah, right. It couldn't be more obvious. So I do have a question about this because I'm sure
Mhm.
that there's a big story about this, but I want to know a little bit about the when you reference art history, are you just referencing it to reference it, or are you trying to create a new storyline from that, like a springboard, or is it just for fun? What's your motivation in referencing?
Yeah, sort of all of those things in a
Okay.
way. I always think, people always ask me, well, what inspires you to paint? And they say, like, I'll paint landscapes, and they'll go, oh, isn't that a great landscape? Doesn't that inspire you? I was like, yeah, kind of. But really, it's almost always other art that inspires me to paint something.
Uh-huh.
It's a little bit of oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that better.
Uh-huh.
There's a little bit of hubris involved in it to some degree.
I
And
know what you mean. I do it myself. Well, I'm also concerned about who are the people in this picture.
You mean literally like who are the models kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Is there a connection that you have with them that I should know about, or is
You
that not
know,
important?
the the painting started out as a completely different painting that I showed like in 1995. But it was such a big painting, nobody was interested in buying it from me.
Hmm.
So at some point, I started painting the landscape that you see in it, basically, which was
Right.
a falls up in the Poconos, and and then slowly I started putting figures into it. Now, one of the things about Cezanne's paintings of bathers that I really like is the fact that, for a guy who always talked about painting in front of the motif, they were all invented.
Yeah. Right.
So these are kind of like that. I mean, none of them are painted from life. Certainly, none of them were painted in situ.
Right.
I didn't have any nude women out in the Poconos with me. I mean, that would be great, but it's really difficult to try to arrange. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I know Cezanne talked about the fact that he wished that he could do that, but especially because
yeah,
of the morals of that day, you couldn't get a group of nude people to paint for you.
it's. I think it's less the morals these days than it is just logistics.
Logistics and expense. You got to pay people for the
Expense.
time.
There's
I mean,
that,
that's a lot of
and
models.
and
So I,
also, like I say, a lot of it was really about sort of mimicking that idea that he was inventing them. So most of these are from drawings from life drawing classes. I taught life drawing for a long time at when I taught at Rutgers. So I had literally a stack of
okay.
18 by 24 notepads of figure studies to work from. And a few of them are from photographs, but most of them are from
Okay.
life class.
Well, I have one other question about this picture before we move on. I know that in Cezanne, his bathers were all about his memories as a kid, going down to the bathing hole with his friends, and so he had this memory of this particular place. Would I be correct in saying that the location of this painting has some significance for you?
Well, the location is actually a place up in the Poconos that we went to when my children were younger, a year after year. So it's
Okay.
a place that I went to pretty often. The whole idea of, going skinny dipping when I was younger, when I was a kid, and then
Hmm.
later when I was in my late teens, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
We had a sand hole where we used to go in the middle of the night. So
Okay. So there
so
is a connection there
so
somehow.
there is that, that
Okay.
that whole REM's night swimming means something to me.
Yeah, right. Well,
So
I'd love to see this painting in person. I'll bet the photo doesn't do it
you'll
justice.
have to come see it sometime in the studio. Yeah,
So speaking of location, this is the same location?
it is literally the same location. Yes.
Okay. So
Um,
are you making lots of studies on this and then bringing those back to the studio?
yeah, this is literally painted from two pastel drawings that I did on the spot,
Okay.
which is oftentimes what I do. Occasionally, I'll go out and paint plein air, but to be honest, like getting down into this ravine with a bunch of painting stuff would be a real pain.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never really been a big one for painting outdoors. So
Yeah.
I mostly do drawings and then work from the drawings.
But
Um,
that was a big lesson for me with Van Gogh and realizing that a lot of his paintings he brought back to the studio and then worked on them. So
yeah,
this
absolutely.
is a mega. And how big is this piece? Are we looking at? This is
Each of those panels is 4 foot by 5 foot, so it's
okay. So it's
8 feet
almost like a
wide
life
and
size.
5 feet high. Yeah,
It's a magnificent work. Whoops, went the wrong way. So I wanted to show that. So I,
this is going back.
this is going way back, but for me, the quality of paint in this, the quality of light that you went across your face and the clothing, it really worked. The whole painting really works for me. Is there a story behind this?
Well, this is I did this right before I went to graduate school, which I went to graduate school late in my career. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I was 40. I was 40 when I went back to graduate school, and it was because I was starting to teach, and I had never gotten my master's degree, so I went
Hmm.
back. So this was probably 1998 or 99. So a while ago now. I mean,
Yeah.
that's 30 odd years ago.
When
uh,
in
so
your work, I know things have changed, but do you consider your works to be autobiographical or are they separate?
well, they almost the things that I paint and the ways that I paint, they almost can't help but be. I don't always think of them literally in those terms,
Hmm.
but this is one of those. It's called self-portrait holding hair or something like that, and I do this all the time. It's just a gesture that I do all the time
So
without thinking
it's a
about it.
mannerism. Uh-huh.
So that's I put that in there, and this was another painting that I had completely painted and shown, and then I brought it back and painted it again, which is I'm pretty. That's something I do fairly often.
Uh-huh.
Like
Can't leave it
I'll
alone.
show something, it's like, oh, I like that. That's good. But then if it comes back, it's fair game to work on again.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of who's the guy. Do you know who Leonard Anderson is by chance?
Yeah, it doesn't ring
He
a bell.
he did that a lot, and I guess
Yeah.
I kind of got permission to do that from him in a way.
The vast majority of artists I talk with all do
Yeah,
it. They can't leave anything alone.
yeah, leave it alone.
Yeah. So speaking of not leaving it alone, this I had to show this painting. Not only because there's that Matisse reference in it with those backgrounds, but to me, actually, my first thought about this was actually that big ham steak that Gauguin painted.
Uh-huh.
It kind of looked, it had similar qualities to it. This is a very
Yeah.
painterly painting, and it's very meaty, and I enjoy that. Are you going to leave this one alone, or has this been already painted out?
It's still like that right this second.
Okay, all right.
This one I look at and I don't think, oh, I could do this to it. It seems pretty finished to me.
Yeah,
I mean, when I do these sort of copies of other painters' work,
right.
usually what it is, it's more like Soutine would do. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you just reset up the whole thing again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that it resembles it, but I'm not literally copying the painting. I have the painting sitting
Right.
there. I reference
Right.
the painting, but I set it up. I have this tabletop that's happens to have a pink. Well, I put a pink sheet of paper on it, kind of thing.
Mm.
And the The drapery is a drapery I have, but actually the pattern is not red. It's kind of a purple color.
Mm. Okay, so
You
you were
know,
adjusting to suit.
so I adjust things. You know, it's like I mean that's sort of a Bonar thing. It's like I set the stuff up, but I seldom literally paint in front of it. I
Yeah.
usually paint in a different room so that I don't feel dictated to by the setup too
So
much.
wait a minute. Are you telling me you make a still life in one room but paint it in another?
Oftentimes, yeah. I mean, occasionally I'll take it in the room where it is if I get lost,
Okay.
you know, and I want to bring it back. Oh, I really don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'll go and paint in front of whatever it is.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, it's usually in a separate room.
That's fantastic. So I chose this one. So I love the looseness of this, and it really reminds me of kind of like a Bay Area figurative stuff, like that sort of heavy, loose quality, a little Cornish.
Yeah.
But this is part of a series of items you did, like setups in a still life in the studio.
I mean, this literally goes back to I mean, I didn't paint this at the beginning of my career, but it literally goes back to the first body of work that I thought was successful that I showed. You know, sent out to jury shows and that kind of thing, and had some success with, sold some of them, all
Mm-hmm.
that business. And this was when I was in undergraduate school, so
Mm.
like 1982 or 83 that this would have been
Okay.
going on.
Well,
Um,
to me, it doesn't matter if it's old or new; it still
no,
works.
no, no, me neither. In fact, I have this is what's in the show that I have up right now.
Oh, fantastic.
So anyway, the to answer your question, it's very sort of comes out of Diebenkorn,
Mm,
but it's also you know, it was just my painting stuff, and I had done literally watercolors of it was the same stuff.
mm, mm,
So, but I tried to make when I was in undergraduate school, I tried to make oil paintings of them, and they sucked.
mm.
So, you know, I don't know whether it was
They're
just like
better
didn't
loose.
quite know how to do it yet.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. But it didn't work out. So
So
20, 30 years later, I like the
maybe you'll
results better.
revisit it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show this final painting. So again, with you have this wonderful fabric, which I'm assuming that you've altered the colors on it. And you've got this sort of the skull, which is I can't not reference Cezanne with that skull. But I enjoyed the not only the painterly quality, but the fact that the skull sort of blends in with that background. It's almost like it's part of it. Was there also a series of skulls that you did? Because I did notice more than one.
I did a few. I have another, you know, the skulls show up in a lot of things. It was
Mm-hmm.
something that one of my students gave me a gift of one that she had brought back from New Guinea or
Mm.
somewhere like that. I can't remember if that's exactly where it was. So I mean, I had always had plastic skulls, but here she had brought me back a real one, which was great.
That was a reason to
Uh,
paint.
so you're right. This is literally a takeoff of a Cezanne that it's actually a watercolor where he sort of mounds up the fabric so that it's sort of, I don't know. Everybody says it's a reference to Saint Victoire,
Mm.
uh, probably is. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, that's the impetus for this, and yeah,
Yeah.
the colors are altered in the fabric, although they're similar. They really are sort of. I mean, you know where it's brown, it's actually
Mm.
brown. It's just a different kind of brown, kind of
Mm. Mm-hmm.
darker brown, I think. And so you know things change. I'm not trying to be a realist painter. So
No, I can tell that. I can
you
tell that
know
you're loose enough that you want invention in there.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean most of the people that I really look to are actually abstract painters more so. The
mm-hmm.
or the sort of those postmodern or post-impressionist painters, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cezanne and Matisse and
Right.
you know those guys.
So I have
You
a
know,
technical question about this painting.
mhm.
Are you laying down an undercolor first? Is that something that you do?
I often do sort of that yellowish tone that's
Yeah,
maybe up in the upper. You can see right at the edge up in the upper left-hand corner.
I saw it there, but the blue bottle in the background looks like it doesn't have it under it. So that's why I was kind of curious. Have
It's
you
possible, you know, a lot of these. Can you hear the train?
that's part of the fun.
I was gonna say, yeah, a couple of times a day. Um, so, um, so sometimes I'll
Okay.
draw first, and sometimes I'll draw right on the prime canvas.
Uh-huh.
So if I know that there's something there, I may paint around it.
Okay.
So it's, and then other times I just, tone do an imprimatur on the whole thing and go with that. That one,
Okay.
you're right. It looks like I painted around that. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
just wasn't
recall
I
exactly,
wasn't 100% sure.
but that's my guess.
So I wanted to continue our conversation with actually your beginning. Crazy question that I like to ask artists. Do you have an earliest memory of being exposed to art?
The earliest one I know of was actually when I was a young kid. I couldn't have been more than 5. I remember my father doing drawings of animals that,
Hmm.
I don't know, I was 5. They seemed very realistic to me
Uh-huh.
at 5. They might
Uh-huh.
not have been
Okay.
that realistic.
Why
I
was
don't,
he drawing animals?
just to entertain us,
Oh, okay.
myself and my brother and sister. And So that's the earliest thing. But I mean, I liked art when I was in school. Sort of always sort of gravitated towards it, but never really thought of it as any kind of a career. When I lived in Alaska, I had a neighbor who was an oil painter, and she gave me an oil painting set one year when I was probably 10 or 11 when she gave me that.
Okay.
And I did some paintings of probably, although she probably gave me a book, a how to paint book, that had clowns or something. And I don't
Right.
know. So I used it till the paint was gone, and then it got put away and I forgot about it.
Hmm.
And she painted, she was sort of a Bob Ross painter.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that at the time, but
Right.
that's kind of the
Formula.
way she painted.
So, so catch us up a little bit. That early childhood, you had some things in art that you were being exposed to. At what point in your career did you think like, okay, I am going to pursue this?
Well, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was actually doing construction work. We had moved back from Alaska to the East Coast. I spent most of my childhood in Alaska.
Hmm.
So it was a bit of a culture shock to move back to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was literally at the end of the 11th grade when we did it too. So that's a
Mm-hmm. Right.
weird kind of thing too. Anyway, um, I was doing construction work and playing in bar bands and that sort of thing. That's what I was doing for a living and for what I did. But I had a girlfriend who was getting ready to, who I had recently started going out with, and she was getting ready to go to the University of Delaware, and she was going to be an art major.
Hmm.
Oh, that's cool. Didn't really think too much about it. Then she
Mm-hmm.
came home like the first or second weekend, and she had her sketchbook. I said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, it's a sketchbook. I have to draw 10 things in this for Monday." And I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at them thinking, "Oh hell, I could do that. I want to go be an art major."
Right.
So I went to the University of Delaware, and for me, it was great because I had been, out of my parents' house long enough to where essentially the University of Delaware paid me
Mm.
to go to school.
Mm. That's
I mean,
nice.
they literally paid me. Not only
Yeah.
did they pay for the tuition, gave me a room, they actually gave me cash. It was
Wow.
really, and I
That's
also had
that's
some decent jobs while I was in school. So,
what,
undergraduate school was a great time for me.
when you were in undergrad, was there anybody who was instrumental in really sort of lighting your fire to move forward?
Well, I would say that there are 4 people. My 3 main professors, some of who you might know. There's Steve Tanis, and who's a figurative painter,
Hmm.
still happily living. Uh, uh, Larry Holmes, who passed
Hmm.
away a few years ago, and then Bob Straight, who passed away just recently.
The other month, yeah.
And they were instrumental. And then the other guy I really have to mention is a guy named Mark Green, who was a graduate student at the time, and I stole from him right and left to this
Yay!
day. So those are the
Great.
guys that are either to blame or to
Right, yeah, yeah. Point the finger at least.
for whatever I'm doing.
So let's flash forward a little bit. You're currently in your studio, and you want to work on something new. Uh, where do you get your ideas from? Is there a current, like a wellspring that you go to? Like what sparks your creativity?
Well, I would say that I was thinking about it the other day, and I said, what I really do is I paint figures in still life, and I paint them in one of two locations. I either paint them as as if they're in the studio, there's studio creations and like that, or I paint them in the landscape.
Hmm.
And I sometimes do landscapes too, but
Hmm.
oftentimes there's something else in it, you know,
Hmm.
uh, whether it's a still life kind of thing or figures or maybe even all of those things. Uh, those are kind of my go-tos, and it's kind of been that way for a long time. I mean, almost from the get-go, I
Do you
would
ever
say.
get stuck though? Like,
Uh, that's pretty broad. It is almost the
are you
hard
a
part is
wellspring of
narrowing
ideas?
things down in some ways.
Okay.
uh, Sometimes. And I do kind of do bodies of work, and sometimes it's about a subject. Sometimes it's like, I hate to say I paint for shows, but I do paint for shows in a way,
Hmm.
in the sense that they create deadlines,
Hmm. Oh
So
yeah.
that's always helpful for me because I can,
Right.
I mean, the biggest part of my process is sitting and staring at whatever I've painted. I
Uh,
would say that's a easily 20 to 1 kind of thing. The
yeah.
time I spend actually painting and the time I spend actually staring at it.
We call that contemplation. It sounds
Contemplation, yeah.
do you when you're in progress, do you always sketch things out? Do you keep a sketchbook?
I probably have a stack of sketchbooks like this too, with 10 pages in each of them. It's something I've always wished I did, but I
Uh-huh.
never have kept what I would call a proper sketchbook. I mean, the
Okay.
closest to that I would say are the things that I would do, in terms of figure drawing, which I would do. Oftentimes I would paint with my students, or draw with my students in class, and or I also ran a little workshop on weekends that a few of us would
Hmm.
get together. So there's lots of those, and those are as close to what I would call a true sketchbook. But they're limited to the subjects that are in them. Otherwise, I think of it as I just draw, and
Okay.
but there's no real rhyme or reason to it other than, oh, I want to draw this.
So would it be fair to say that in your creative process that the work itself is kind of like a sketchbook? Like, do you keep it open enough that you would change things midstream in the paintings?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I often paint from drawings, but it's it's unlikely that the final painting will just be, well, there's so much difference between just the way the drawing is and the way I paint. But there's often not a one-to-one correlation between the two.
Okay.
Oftentimes the paintings are made up of multiple drawings. In other words,
Right.
and if I'm painting, I don't know, if I set up a big still life to paint in the studio, I'll move stuff around as I'm painting it. And if I paint it in the other place, I just kind of leave it or paint over. You see vestiges of it here and there, that kind
Right.
of stuff. And I find that interesting. That I like seeing sort of the history in a painting,
Uh-huh.
both I like being able to tell how somebody painted it. And
Yeah,
like,
me too.
that was there, and then they moved it, they did
Right.
this, they did
Right.
that to it. All of that's interesting to me.
So
Uh,
you have fessed up that you will rework paintings. Have you ever gotten to the point where you just discard something? Just like,
I wreck paintings all the time.
okay.
Well, not all the time, but frequently enough. And usually it's the fact that I overpaint them. They go too far, and then I always tell my students is like, well, you can't actually ruin an oil paint because you can always paint over. But if you that's only true to a certain degree. Yes, you
Hmm.
can, but it may
Hmm.
not be. If you want some things to be pretty thin, if you've crusted the thing up, it's like
Right.
there's
Yeah, the
only
fat
so
over
much you can
thin.
do.
So looking back over your work, how would you say that your work has changed over the years?
Well, in some ways, it's kind of gone back, but I would say that originally I did think of myself as more of a realistic painter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that kind of changed, and in I would also say that I was pretty influenced. Do you know there's a painter named Odd Nerdrum? He's a Norwegian
Yeah.
painter.
Mm-hmm.
He is.
I love
Well,
the work.
when uh, when I was in undergraduate school, he had his first American show in the Delaware Art Museum, just like a week.
Mm-hmm.
There were like six paintings in there. And I remember seeing that and thinking, oh, wow, this is really cool because I didn't know anybody who painted. I mean, I painted abstractly through most of undergraduate school. But anyway, his way of working I thought was really interesting. It was very
Mm-hmm.
painterly. It was very Baroque. Sort of sort of a modern day kind of Rembrandty kind of
I can
approach.
see it in your work now. Now that you mention
So like the self portrait is very much coming out of that,
it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really. And I painted that way till I don't know the early 2000s. Really, that was probably the biggest sort of influence in terms of or how I was thinking about them looking in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I still think of that sort of Baroque idea in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like with the heightened color palette of a Fauvist in a way.
Right.
so so it's a weird kind of butting together of two things that sort of don't want to go together, but you can
But
how
that's
they
why it
did.
works.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
It's neither Fauvist, it's not doesn't look like Rembrandt, doesn't really look like Matisse either. You
Yeah.
know, but there's somewhere in between there that is sort of
So,
the territory.
unfortunately, we've only got time for two more questions. Time flies.
Yeah.
So the one I have to ask you, how often are you in your studio?
It's been I haven't been in the studio a lot because we're actually making a new studio. It's
Okay.
been in the
All
process for
right.
close to a year.
All right.
And my wife and I each painted a show in this unfinished studio, but actually the contractor's supposed to come next week to finish it.
Okay.
So
Do you get itchy if you don't make work?
sometimes, but
Okay.
not always. I mean, I work. I always say I work in fits and starts, but I'm
Okay.
working all the time. I'm always thinking about things, reading about things. This is and that. I don't. I mean, people ask me, well, how long did it take you to make that painting? And I'm always thinking, well, if you're talking about really mixing paint and
Right.
brush to canvas, a day. I
Right.
worked on it over a month, 2 months, 3 months.
Time's a little
You know,
irrelevant.
it's
So,
irrelevant,
yeah.
because I don't start a painting and then paint it till it's finished, and I work on multiple paintings at a time.
Hmm.
So it's so hard to answer that question, really.
So, final
It takes as long as
question
it
then.
takes.
Long as it takes. Final question. What does making art do for you?
Well, I don't know. I suppose it's a big part at this point of sort of how I just think of myself. Uh, it's a way of I don't know. It's a projection of self. I mean, I have other things that I do too. I mean, I play guitar, I garden. There's something else that I do. But anyway, these other things, they're not. I don't think of them as being careers. Well, I don't know. My painting is arguably is not a career; it's more of a vocation.
Hmm.
And in the terms of if I'd definitely be a starving artist if I was depending on how many paintings I sell.
Okay.
Yeah, I made my career teaching art,
Right. Right.
but but I still work.
Good. Well, Bruce, I can't thank you enough for coming to talk with me today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Fan of your work. Now I got to, I unfortunately I've never seen it in person, but now I'm determined to. So I'm
Oh, well,
thrilled
when the
about that.
studio is finished, I'll send you an invitation to come down.
Fantastic.
Check it out. You can look at everything that's in there, and there's way too many things in there. You should
So,
see my other stuff too. I got a collection of some stuff you might like too.
okay, yeah, we'll talk.
Yep.
So thank you again for coming by today. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch Art Show today. We really appreciate your support. Of course, we'd love it if you could like and subscribe to Art Show. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments section. If we can't answer them, we'll just pass them along to Bruce. So again, Bruce, thank you. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Craig.
Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.